morning, my name is Nina House and this is my project on South to Freedom's Chapter 5 and 6. So Chapter 5 is called In Accordance with the Law, They Are Free. This is based on the time period 1830 through about 1835. My author's main argument in Chapter 5 is people who fled to Mexico from the United States were considered free under Mexico's law. However, as time progressed, Mexico's laws were constantly changing, and Anglo-Americans were putting pressure on the Mexican authority in Texas to ensure their enslaved properties. Furthermore, Mexico laws did not ensure that enslaved people would not become indentured servants upon their arrival, because that was the case for many of them. The first piece of evidence I will give is about an enslaved woman named Honorai in 1831. She disappeared from her plantation in Louisiana and fled to Mexico with a man named John Franz. Unfortunately, upon their arrival, he ended up selling her to a businessman named Samuel May Williams as an indentured servant. Roughly 6 months after her stay in Mexico as an indentured servant, her owner found out about this and petitioned the Mexican council to try to get her return, but he was unsuccessful. And that is when I will read a quote real quick. North Americanos forced hundreds if not thousands of enslaved people to sign indentured contracts before crossing the Sabine River into Tejas, page 81. The second piece of evidence I will give you is about an enslaved man named Jean Antoine, and a ship called the Iris. He lived in New Orleans, and he went into the ship, the Iris, 3 months before its deployment, its takeoff, and he hid under the ship, basically, or in the hull of the ship. And after they had left to Mexico, they became suspicious that there was someone living with them, basically. And once they had reached Mexico, he was captured and sent right back to New Orleans. Sadly, he ended up killing himself as soon as they arrived. But the reason I put this evidence in here is to show that due to Mexico's inconsistent laws and changing government, it wasn't a guarantee that enslaved people were going to be free and truly escape slavery. So Chapter 6, the Texas Revolution, this is based on about the time frame of 1835 through 1837. The author's main argument in Chapter 6 is that the Texas Revolution was a war against the abolition of slavery. Anglo-Americans said that they were fighting for liberty, but in reality, they were fighting for slavery and their rights to enslaved property. Furthermore, although the Anglo-Americans won Texas' independence, Mexico's new legislation to abolish slavery completely was praised nationwide. The first piece of evidence I'm going to give you is in 1835 with a man named Lieutenant Francisco, who was ordered to retrieve a cannon from the town of Gonzales. The town ended up denying this request, which was not their first act of disobedience. They had also disobeyed the ban on the introduction of slavery, as well as the state's constitution to free children of enslaved people. Since Mexico's laws was becoming had a more centralized system of government, this wasn't going to continue on. Therefore, the people of Gonzales ended up uprising and pointing their cannon towards the Mexico's authorities' camp, and with a flag saying, "Come and get it." The next piece of evidence I'm going to give you is after Texas had taken the Alamo, and Antonio Lopez de Santa Anna wanted to go take it back. Basically, Mexico's forces had surrounded the Alamo. It wasn't looking good for Anglo-Americans. And as soon as Lieutenant William Barrett Travis was shot dead, who was basically the main authority of the Anglo-Americans, the one working the operation in the Alamo, the ones that had already taken it over, his slave, a man named Joe, ended up going to hide because he knew things were looking bad and the Mexico's soldiers were killing everyone inside of the Alamo. As soon as he heard things calm down, he came out and 2 Mexican soldiers were about to kill him, but the Mexican captain stopped the soldiers and said, "No slave would have taken up arms against the Mexican army," the captain explained, "except by force," page 110. And another quote I'm going to give you is on page 111. The Texans claim to have taken up arms in defense of freedom and democracy, but they had in fact been fighting for something other than liberty. To wrap this up, this content fits into what we are learning for this course by talking about the lives and journeys of enslaved people and indentured servants. It also helps to understand Anglo-Americans' true intentions in seeking independence. Most of the stories involving any of the enslaved individuals I was not aware about, which was interesting to learn. My final thoughts, I think that this is very enlightening and sheds light to the many hardships enslaved people endured while escaping to Mexico. And I would be curious to learn more about the enslaved lives as they transitioned in Texas to an independent state to joining the United States. You'll have a great day. Thank you for listening.